So, the Europe Builds podcast is all about uncovering the untapped knowledge within the European startup ecosystem. And there's no better place to be than the DOERS Summit, where for the very first time, founders, investors, and operators are meeting up to turn their ideas into reality.
The timing also couldn't be better. Some European problems may persist, but we're finally seeing winds of change, from the new Commission's competitiveness compass to reducing internal market barriers. There's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for hope. So for all of this and more, join us for this series of Europe Builds episodes showcasing some of the greatest founders, operators and investors from the DOERS Summit.
Hello, George. It's very good to have you here.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to attend the podcast.
Thank you so much. Let's say George Georgiadis, founding partner of Evercurious. And to our listeners, if it sounds familiar, it is because the other founding partner was also here with us earlier today. But we're going to try sort of a different approach with you, George. But of course, we're going to have some similarities. The first one being, we have to ask you to give the dreaded elevator pitch. So tell us, who are you and what do you do in just a few seconds?
So in a nutshell, at Evercurious, we are both engineers and investors.
Mm-hmm.
So both my partner Alex and myself, we studied mechanical engineering. We had the typical hardcore engineering path. But at some point, we realized that supporting hands-on startups is what we like, what we love. And at the same time, we have seen that through investing, we can really support them at different levels. Mm-hmm. So step by step in our careers, we made some changes. We did this and that pivot. And at the end of the day, we landed with investor roles. In the beginning, abroad, myself in Germany, Alex in Switzerland. And at some point, we decided to come back to Greece. The timing was right. At the end of the day, it looks like that. But generally, we're believing in the potential of Greece right now, of the entire ecosystem. We see that we're reaching step by step a maturity level that enables us to go to the next step in the next 5 years. And speaking about the venture capital, we speak about also at least 10 years time horizon. So we're very good aligned with what we have in the pipeline. So our idea, our approach in a nutshell, that we want to focus on early stage, because early stage, it's not a typical financial game. It's something that you have to work very close with the founders, be hands-on, try to add value on many different levels. And this is what we want to do. We are not investment bankers. It's nothing bad about it, but it's totally different approach. So that's why we want to focus on early stage. We want to focus on deep tech, startups and purpose-driven founders. Meaning, these are not buzzwords, but at the end of the day, what we look for is founders with strong academic background that are developing defensible technologies. And we're really keen on taking technological risks rather than market risks. In a nutshell, if the technology works, there is a market for this technology out there.
I have to say, you passed.
Thank you.
It was very similar to you mentioned a few times that you want to help startups in a very tangible way. So can you tell me how an early stage investor is doing this, or how will you be doing it with your portfolio companies?
It depends practically on the nature of the startup. If we speak about startups that are more commercial, usually the founders are really, really good at pitching, communicating things, perhaps gaining first customers, creating some early traction and things like that. In the technical founders, which is practically the case that we are focusing on, we're not usually seeing this. Yeah. The founders are pretty weak when it comes to how they can sell, how they can pitch their idea, how can they communicate practically their value proposition. And this is really a huge issue. You have a founder perhaps that is doing a top technology that is helping decarbonization or something really big, much bigger practically than the company itself, and they are not in the position to communicate it. And this is a very huge issue if they want to go to the next level, because at some point, to gain customers, to raise more money, you have to be able to communicate your vision in a good way, and supporting them in such things practically, how they can sell better, how can they communicate better. Support them on simple stuff like creating a solid business and financial model and things like that seem to be pretty easy, but at the end of the day, they are crucial for the existence, first of all, because startups have to raise again and again some funding rounds. We're not thinking that with one funding round, it's end of story. They have to raise again and have a pretty good investor readiness. So, and also at the end of the day, it's an existence thing, and then also something that will enable them to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that early on creating such a thing, and then also some few stuff regarding governance, like how they construct the entire cap table, what kind of internal processes they have when it comes to governance and things like that. So I would say being a sparring partner with a helicopter view that supports at different levels, it's something that is really, really important, especially for technical founders that are really, really used to focusing on the technology.
A quick follow-up on this, because I've noticed this too whenever I talk to tech founders. And from a journalist side, we've talked about this before in our podcast. Sometimes you meet these brilliant founders, but you're not in the same mindset to understand the brilliance of their tech idea because they don't communicate it well, right? So how do you help them? And do you think that should the founder always be the face of the of the startup, or are there different ways? Like, so is it about skills transfer then, or are there different ways? Like, do you help them package the story or delegate it to someone else in their team to do it? So how do you go around the challenge of priming them to speak?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
I would actually, first of all, take a step back and say that when it comes to technical founders, it's like a bit stereotypic what I'm going to say, but there are two archetypes of the technical founder. It's the technical founder. I've done a PhD myself, so I'm allowed to say this. There are like PhD people, guys that at the end of the day, they have a great solution for a problem that is not really existing.
Yeah.
So this is an issue. So this is something that in this case, it's difficult to find a solution because at the end of the day, there is no market out there. So that's why we say that for us, it's like we're fine. We're keen on taking technological risks, but the market has to be out there and should be obvious.
Yeah.
Then the second archetype is that a founder that is developing a solution for an existing problem. This is what we are looking for. In this case, as you said, sometimes it's difficult to turn this founder into a perfect CEO.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not about turning somebody into or making someone to become the best CEO. Perhaps at some point after 2 or 3 financing rounds, another late co-founder, CEO, whatever, will join the company and can take over with a more business-oriented mindset. But in the very early stages, I think that it is crucial that the technical founder steps into this role because nobody won't believe in your vision. There's no one that will believe in your vision if you're not believing in this vision yourself.
Yeah. And also, you're the parent of the solution. You're the parent.
It's your kid. You want somehow to make it big.
I have a question about LPs here. So is it harder to convince LPs to come into a deep tech fund or not? Because I guess is the cycle a lot longer when it comes down to these technologies?
I would say it's definitely different. I can give you an example, a tangible example. We have invested previously in a company that was for 6 years pre-revenue. So you have to endure long, you have to support them again and again, raise more funds, perhaps also find some non-dilutive funding, etc. It's a long cycle, definitely. But when they made it and they passed practically all the regulatory things that they had to, FDA, C, etc., in 1 year, from 0, they landed to 7 million revenue. So how long would it take for a SaaS company to reach 7 million in revenue? I suppose, again, 7, 8 years or something like that. But the progression would have been different. You could have a nice exponential growth or whatever. This is from 0 to 7, from 0 to whatever, right?
Yeah. So
you still have to believe in the people, believe in the technology, understand that the circle is different, and understand that you cannot do increase your market spending and customers will come. No, you have just to wait and fight again and again and be very, very persistent until you reach some milestones, and then you can sell, something like that. So again, it's different. And if you don't have such an example, you don't stand a chance convincing LPs to invest. So I think, generally, I think this is the case. It's always good to have some best practices and some case studies, but especially in this case, to show that this is a reality and this can happen, it's much more important than things that are a bit easier to understand, right? I mean, marketplaces, SaaS, etc., are easier to understand and digest.
You can put yourself into a consumer's position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question about Europe? We're trying to rally up our optimism here at EUROPEBUILDS. We had the AI Summit just take place. There was a strong European presence. Macron really took it upon himself to raise the flag there. Do you stand behind this hope and optimism, especially on deep tech? Does Europe have a shoe in the race? Can we have a competitive horse in the game? What do you think?
I think Europe is traditionally really, really strong when it comes to the technology.
Tech, yeah.
Technology, technological roots, technological background, etc. When it comes to the commercialization of technology, we have been terrible.
Yeah.
It's clear, you see that many, many big technologies were developed in Europe and commercialized in the States. So yeah. I think that this is something that has to change. And I think perhaps the pressure that we have now from the entire geopolitical situation worldwide, etc., will make us eventually stick a bit more together.
Yeah.
Find what brings us together rather than divide us, and based on this, try to take the next step. But we think, we need definitely something that something like a European Inc. or something like that, right? We need a structure, and there is no structure. We're speaking about Europe, but there is no structure.
And did you start by forming relationships as Evercurious with the European ecosystem or with the US ecosystem?
100% with the European. I've lived and worked in Germany for more than 10 years. Alex, the same in Switzerland. So with Europe, and especially with the German-speaking countries, the DACH region, we have very, very strong bonds and a clear footprint. So for us also, this is part of our strategy, finding good founders in Greece and able to help them practically scale their business into and practically go into these markets, and vice versa, collaborate with some VCs in these regions and invest in companies that might be interested to tap into the Southeastern European market.
Yeah, to this region, yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, what we need is this kind of interconnection between the ecosystems, the interconnection between the companies. And we see there are companies for example, we have invested in a company 1.5 years ago, something like that, pre-fund one, that is headquartered in Helsingborg, in Sweden, and has 2 employees in Portugal, 1 in Spain, 5 in Helsingborg, something like that, and 1 in Italy, 1 in Switzerland. And they have a different approach, right? It's not again, remote working, hybrid working, blah, 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 buzzwords, but at the end of the day, you can do something like that nowadays. And it's a pity not to be able to do this within Europe.
I will say, to add, I guess, to our conversation, the same spirit, we're good in tech in Europe. We're also good at getting together and getting things done at times of crisis more than at times of peace or prosperity. So maybe this pressure you're describing could add a little bit more on that front. The last thing I want to ask is, when it comes to being a good investor, one of the best traits that one should have is figuring out that something's going to work before everybody else does, right? Being an early backer or early adopter. Has there been one time where you saw an idea that you wanted to back before other people did? And this could be as an investor in your years in Germany. This could also be just as a trend that you were following, that you were like, my instinct proved out to be right. And what can you point us at that moment?
Yes. One of our mottos actually in the fund is that we want to invest based on conviction, not trends. This is because of 2 main reasons. The first thing, all the topics that are super trendy, they will most probably attract big money from the States or whatever. So we don't stand a chance accessing such kind of things, right? Which is not necessarily bad or good, because it doesn't mean that the things that are trendy are going to be at the end of the day successful.
Yeah.
So for us, again, it always has been super important to identify some hidden gems, some people that are a bit outliers, outsiders, and support them, because we believe in something and we see from the very, very beginning on something tangible. And of course, there are things that we strongly believe in. For example, health tech, with a particular focus on medical devices because of our engineering background, is something that we're very, very interested in. And we think that the whole prevention space, there are so many things that could be done in this space. So if we see something that has this preventive approach and at the same time is something that is that has clear novel technology, we totally love this. And so that's why I don't want to say that we don't follow any kind of trends, or we have our own beliefs, but we do not want it to be like trend driven, something like that. And we see this right now with AI, right? So I think that Gen AI might be practically the new marketplace. So a model that everybody can associate itself with such kind of model, because definitely it has much value to bring. But the question for me again is, considering like our approach and thesis, this is not really defensible. So at the end of the day, again, when we find such kind of trends, it's always important to be pragmatic.
There's also going to be saturation, right? I mean, if it's a trend, probably a lot of people are going to try to do the same thing too.
I can tell you also a typical example for my previous work at Volkswagen. I was in the strategy department of Volkswagen, and one of the key enabling technology of the future was 3D printing. So at some point, in all the mouths of all the top managers, etc., was like 3D printing will revolutionize the entire production, etc.
It's going to solve global hunger, climate change.
We don't need a press shop. We don't need a tool shop. What we have done in the past 100 years doesn't make sense anymore, etc. And this is not a pragmatic approach. We need to be pragmatic with technology and try to make the most out of it.
I have a closing question for you. If we sit here in a year from now, and we also kind of get the opportunity to speak to some of your founders, what do you want them to be saying about why they chose Evercurious?
Very nice question. Let me think. I mean, there are obvious answers, right? That we have supported them in tough times, that we have been there when they couldn't raise easily money, and we opened many doors for them, we supported them sell, etc. But at the end of the day, and again, this is a bit cliche, but at the end of the day, you want them to tell all good things about you. And of course, there will be also tough times in the collaboration, because sometimes as an investor, you have to be the bad cop in the entire discussion and try to press them a bit more. And this is what I think that also in Europe, we have to do this a bit more. Compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I think the competition now, because of China, India, etc., becoming higher and higher.
Yeah,
so we have somehow to do this kind of extra mile. So taking this extra mile buzzword, I think that I would like our investors to say that, okay, these guys, they have invested in us, but they have done also an extra mile for us. They have perhaps believed in us in the times that others didn't do. Something like that.
I like
awesome. I love that. So George Georgiadis, Evercurious, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of EUROPEBUILDS, where we show that the European ecosystem is no longer an underdog story.
If you liked our episode and want to hear more, follow EUROPEBUILDS on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Born's YouTube channel.